To Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, the woman I once called the true symbol of the soft power of African women, I write this letter, or rather, I send this message not as a head of state seeking to judge a peer, but as a brother, as someone who once believed that the light from Dar es Salaam could illuminate the entire continent. I have followed your journey since the very first days you rose to the highest office of your nation. You were the pride of millions of African women, living proof that leadership does not need to shout in order to be heard. But today, as I see the news from Tanzania, arbitrary arrests, silenced voices, young people dragged away simply for speaking the truth, I cannot remain silent. I must speak plainly, Madam President. What is happening is a dark stain on the mirror that reflects us all. It is not merely a political mistake. It is a moral fracture that could shatter the faith millions once placed in you. I say this with deep regret, for I once saw in you the embodiment of an Africa we could all be proud of, a woman who led with intellect, with grace, and with unwavering resolve amid political storms. And precisely because I believed in you, I cannot pretend not to see what is unfolding. Madam Samia, let me say this not as a critic, but as a younger brother warning his elder sister. When a woman raised to greatness by her people forgets those who built the ladder for her ascent, she herself begins to destroy the bridge between power and trust. Tanzania, once praised as a model of stability and tolerance, is now becoming the center of unease across the region. Not because of war, not because of hunger, but because of the shrinking of freedom, the very thing our ancestors shed blood to secure. I do not write to humiliate, but to warn. I do not speak to condemn, but to awaken. Africa does not need another leader blinded by power. Africa needs those brave enough to step back to see themselves before it is too late. If the light of Dar es Salaam goes out, then from Ouagadougou to Nairobi, this entire continent will sink into the darkness of disappointment. Please, Madam President, do not let that happen. Madam Samia, human rights are not gifts granted by a government. They are the natural rights of every human being. No one, neither a president nor a king, has the authority to decide when their citizens may speak and when they must remain silent. But in Tanzania today, I am witnessing things that weigh heavily on my heart. I hear that young people, journalists, and independent voices have been arrested simply because they dared to speak their minds. I hear that a young woman named Caroline Rosie, who merely shared her opinion about a financial bill, was arrested in broad daylight as if she were a threat to national security. Madam Samia, a strong nation is not one without dissenters. A strong nation is one that can listen to opposing voices without fear. We, the leaders of Africa, must never forget what our ancestors taught us. The people are not the shadows of power, they are its source of light. If you extinguish those lights, you will be left only with darkness, a darkness born of forced silence and quiet fear. I remember the time when the entire world looked to Tanzania as proof that democracy can wear a gentle face. But today the world has begun to ask, what happened to that light? I know there are people within your own government who will say, the situation is complicated. We need stability. We need order. But madam, stability cannot be built upon fear. When citizens remain silent not because they are persuaded, but because they fear punishment, that is not order. It is the illusion of peace. You know this better than anyone. Tanzania was once a refuge for liberation movements, the land where Julius Nyerere taught Africa about compassion and leadership. And yet today, that same nation arrests those who merely wish to express opinions about a law. That is not just the tragedy of Tanzania, it is a wound shared by all of Africa. I do not say this to lecture you, for my own Burkina Faso has also endured its share of mistakes years when the voices of our people were stifled. I only wish to share a lesson that I have learned in blood. Freedom is never killed by an external enemy. It dies slowly when those within begin to fall silent. If today we allow a young woman to be arrested simply for speaking her mind, then tomorrow it will be a journalist, then an activist, and soon even your closest friend. And by the time you turn around, you will find yourself standing alone in a golden palace surrounded not by trust but by fear. Madam Samia, I do not wish to see that happen. I want to see Tanzania remain a place where citizens can debate without trembling, where women can say no without being silenced, where power is not a weapon but a responsibility. If one voice is silenced, remember that millions of others will fall silent with it. History never forgives those who use silence to preserve their power. Let Tanzania prove that a woman president can be strong yet compassionate, firm yet willing to listen. When you rose to the presidency of Tanzania, The entire continent of Africa watched with pride. Girls in Ouagadougou, Kampala, Kigali, and Accra looked to you as a miracle of our time, a woman who, through intellect, patience, and compassion, stepped into a place long reserved for men. You did not represent only Tanzania. You became the embodiment of hope, a symbol of what African women can achieve when they are trusted and respected. But today, seeing what is unfolding, I am compelled to remind you, a symbol has meaning only as long as it continues to reflect the light that people once saw in it. When a woman attains power, it is not merely a personal victory, it is a triumph for an entire generation. But when that woman forgets her vow to protect justice, the wound is not confined to her nation, it ripples across millions of women watching from afar, silently asking themselves, are we still on the right path? I recall the words of Wangari Maathai, the Kenyan woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize. You cannot build the walls of peace on the foundations of fear. Madam Samia, remember that every decision you make today is not only judged by your cabinet, but also by the young girls who dream of leading tomorrow. They are watching you to understand. Can a woman hold power and still remain compassionate? Can she speak the truth without being punished? Can power be used as a tool to protect rather than to silence? You are their model, but that model is trembling. I say this not with bitterness, but with sorrow. In the smoky world of politics, women leaders are scrutinized more than anyone else. A single misstep can set back the struggle for equality for decades. That is why every time you sign a decree, every time you remain silent in the face of an arrest, you are not only determining the fate of one citizen, you are shaping the fate of an entire generation of women. Remember those who paved the way before you. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first female president of Liberia, chose reconciliation over revenge. Joyce Banda of Malawi rebuilt her nation's economy by restoring trust among her people. Wangari Maathai planted trees to remind the world that progress cannot exist where human dignity is lost. They were not perfect, but they never lost what mattered most: kindness within power. Madam Samia, I know that you once carried that same light. I believe it still burns within you, only now it is shrouded by the clouds of pride and the fear of losing control. And I say this as a friend. Pause for a moment and look at yourself in the mirror of history, because history never remembers the most powerful rulers. History remembers those who found the courage to correct their course in time. Show Africa that a woman can be strong, can lead, can defend her nation, and still have the courage to admit when she has gone astray. That is the true strength of a woman president. Madam Samia, I will speak to you truthfully. Power is a gentle beast when one first touches it, but once it has tamed you, it becomes a wild creature that refuses to leave. At the beginning, power brings a sacred feeling, the honor of serving the nation, the joy of hearing the people's cheers, the privilege of walking into rooms that once existed only in dreams. But if the one who holds power is not vigilant, it gradually transforms the people's loyalty into fear, and their own conviction into the illusion that everything is fine. I have seen this before. I have lived through it. The leaders before me in Burkina Faso walked that same path. They began with ideals and ended in the loneliness of glory. They did not realize that power is not a possession, but a temporary responsibility. You may hold the presidential seat for 10 years or 20 years, but you cannot forever hold the gaze of your people, not once that gaze has shifted from trust to doubt. I hear many around you say, they criticize out of jealousy. They oppose because they do not understand. They are being manipulated. No, madam, that is not true. They oppose because they love their country, because they can see what power is doing to you, something those within its walls often can no longer see. Power does not change people. It merely strips away the mask and reveals who they truly are. If someone once kind becomes harsh, if someone once willing to listen now grows silent before cries for help, it is not because they have become worse, but because power has awakened their ego, devouring the humanity within them. Madam Samia, power is like a new garment. When we wear it for the first time, we feel proud, confident, and special. But if we wear it for too long, forgetting that beneath it we are still human, that garment becomes an invisible chain binding our soul. I once told my ministers, do not let the people fear us more than they trust us, because when the people are afraid, they fall silent. And when they fall silent, we may believe we are ruling in peace. But in truth, that silence marks the beginning of collapse. Do you see it, madam? The history of Africa is filled with bitter lessons. Leaders once celebrated were eventually overthrown not by violence, but by forgetfulness. Rulers once called the parents of the nation were finally abandoned by the very children they sought to protect. There is nothing more terrifying than being forgotten. It makes no noise, spills no blood, yet it is cold, final, and absolute. And that is what awaits leaders who forget that power is only a mirror reflecting the hearts of their people. I say this earnestly, not as an equal in office, but as one who once stood on the edge of his own abyss. When I looked around and saw those cheering for me, I asked myself, among them, who would dare tell me the truth when I am wrong? That question, madam, is the candle that illuminates the soul of every leader. If the answer is no one, then it means that power has begun to corrode the heart. Those around you, they may be loyal, but are they honest? Do they praise you because they believe in you, or because they fear losing their position? Are those applauses the sound of patriotism, or merely the echo of compromise? Madam Samia, please look closely. Sometimes the most dangerous people are not the opponents outside, but those smiling within the same room. It is the little foxes that spoil the vineyard. Do not let the vineyard you have nurtured with the trust of your people be destroyed by foxes wearing the cloak of loyalty. You do not need more cheerleaders, you need truth-tellers. You do not need more flags and flowers. You need hearts that still dare to believe that justice is not yet dead in Tanzania. Power, if not restrained by morality, will turn anyone, man or woman, into a prisoner within their own palace. And I pray, madam, that you will not become the next name on that sorrowful list. Madam Samia, there is a truth that every leader, sooner or later, must learn. There can be no peace where justice has not been served. Justice is not words. It is not a slogan to be spoken on international stages. It is action. It is the courage to correct what is wrong, even when doing so costs us political convenience. I know that you understand the pain of the poor, that you came from a humble life and earned the love of the Tanzanian people through your warmth and your gentle smile. But today, I see in their eyes fear and uncertainty, things no leader ever wishes to see. And I believe that you, and you alone, have the power to end that. I do not come to judge. I come to invite you to begin again. Begin with justice, the very thing every Tanzanian longs for. Those who were imprisoned merely for speaking their minds, return to them their freedom. Those who were wounded or lost loved ones in the protests, compensate them with respect, with concrete action, not with empty promises. I have learned that you once spoke of forgiveness and reconciliation. That is a good sign, madam. But forgiveness cannot stand alone. Forgiveness must walk beside justice, like the two wings of the same bird. If only one wing is stretched, the bird will forever circle in the chaos of the past. Do what has never been done before. Enact a law of compensation for victims, so that families who have suffered loss in turbulent years may find comfort in the legitimacy of justice. Such an act is not only humanitarian, it would be the political hallmark of a great leader. Reconciliation does not weaken power, it gives power legitimacy. Madam Samia, remember this. The true strength of a ruler lies not in the ability to punish, but in the ability to forgive without losing order, to show mercy without abandoning justice. A law signed in the spirit of humanity can save an entire generation from the endless cycle of hatred. When a leader bows her head to apologize, it is not a sign of weakness. It is the mark of a nation's maturity. It is how Nelson Mandela transformed South Africa from the brink of division into a symbol of peace. It is how Ellen Johnson Sirleaf healed Liberia after war. And it could be how Samia Suluhu Hassan leads Tanzania into history, not as a nation held together by fear, but as a country strengthened by compassion. I know that some within your government may whisper that reconciliation is a sign of weakness. But no, madam, reconciliation is the courage of the victorious. A true victor does not need to crush her opponents. She only needs to make them bow before her kindness. Madam Samia, open the doors of dialogue with civil organizations, with the youth, with the press. Show them that your government does not fear the truth. For when the people are allowed to speak, the nation is allowed to heal. A wound that is covered is not a wound that has healed. It is only waiting to fester. If today you choose to open your heart, I believe that the Tanzanian people will respond with gratitude, and the world from Addis Ababa to New York will speak your name as that of a leader who placed human rights above personal reputation. Justice is not retribution. Justice is the courage to admit that we can be wrong and still rise again with dignity. Let the world see that here, in Africa, there is a woman who has proven that the heart can be stronger than power. Madam Samia, I speak to you not only as a president to another president, but as a brother within the great African family. We may differ in language, in borders, in culture, but we share the same dream: freedom, dignity, and justice. Africa once rose from the chains of colonialism through unity. In those days, Tanzania was the torch that lit the path for the entire continent. Julius Nyerere taught us that freedom has no meaning if it belongs to only one person. But today, that torch is dimming not because of winds from outside, but because of the fear and silence that live within us. When one African nation suppresses the voices of its own people, it is not merely a domestic affair. It is a wound shared by the entire continent. We have already endured too much pain from the outside world: slavery, wars, poverty, and debt. The last thing we need now is to wound one another from within. If the people of Tanzania are silenced, then every African becomes less free. Because justice in Dar es Salaam does not belong only to Tanzania, it belongs to all of Africa. Let us not allow others to speak for us about human rights. It must be we Africans ourselves who have the courage to speak the truth to one another, even when it is hard to hear. I hope Tanzania will once again become a beacon of freedom, so that every person across this continent may look eastward and say, "There, justice still shines." History is watching us. And one day, people will ask, in that moment, did she remain silent, or did she act? Tanzania can still become the symbol of a new Africa, one where women lead with wisdom and compassion, where justice and freedom are not slogans, but the very breath of life. If you choose that path, history will remember you not as the one who made her people afraid, but as the one who helped them believe again. And if anyone asks me, I will say, in the east of Africa there was a woman who rekindled the very light she once dimmed. Please, do not let the lamp of Zanzibar, the symbol of Tanzania's light, fade into the darkness of silence. Let it burn once more with courage, with compassion, and with faith that humanity is stronger than power. From Ouagadougou, I send you my sister, my colleague, and the woman who once embodied hope, this sincere prayer. Choose the light. Stand with your people. Show the world that in Africa there are leaders who love more than they fear. Thank you.